Welcome to the Breadwinner Energy Podcast. I'm your host, T. Daniels, wife, mama of two girls, multi-business owner, iced coffee connoisseur, and your official bad bitch mentor. Get ready to transform your boring business into a money-making machine by learning how to just be better at being you. No more playing by the rules. It's time to hone in on your gifts, turn up your energy, and make some serious cash. So grab your coffee, your headphones, or just cover your child's ears and let's dive in. We are back with another episode, and today I am talking to Meghan. I found her on TikTok. I immediately connected with her energy, and I was like, we have to get her on the show. We have to share her love with everybody. You are just such a beautiful, bright spirit, and I think people will feel your energy through this episode. I just know it. So welcome in.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm already just connecting with you, connecting with your audience. I instantly got chills the second we opened up this container. So I'm like, oh. So I'm so excited to be here and connect with you. You are such an inspiration to all of your viewers. It's been amazing to check out your content and speak with you for a few minutes beforehand. And I'm really looking forward to getting into everything that we talk about today.
Me too. This episode is going to be so good because when I found you on TikTok, I was going through another spiritual awakening and you just popped up on my For You page and your energy, you were doing, what's it called? Light work?
Yeah, energy healing.
Yes, session. And I immediately was just like, oh my God, you're so captivating. And it just almost like you can just relax. You can just take a deep breath the moment you open your screen. So everyone here, once this episode is over, don't leave us yet, but once it's over, go to her TikTok because you're just going to, you're going to feel it. It's insane. I've even had sessions done, personally, but even through just your TikToks, I was like, this is incredible. Can you tell everyone who you are, what you do, how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. So my name is Meghan Kittredge. You can find me on TikTok. I have been practicing energy healing, practicing as a Reiki master for, maybe 6 or 7 years at this point. Prior to that, I'm coming from a behavioral health background as a crisis intervention specialist working with people with substance use disorder. So I've been in this field roughly for about 10 years. But I found energy healing when all of my tools weren't working. I was going through a really significant loss, a miscarriage actually, and I had all of the support that I could ask for, like loving family, friends, a huge community, things I was involved in, and nothing was landing. And it was actually a woman I had never met before. I was in the middle of grieving. My body wasn't doing what it needed to do. She came up and she said, "Can I put my hands on you?" And I was able to complete that process and move into this grief space, but with presence and acceptance. And it ended up being something that had completely transformed my life in a direction that I never really saw it going. I've always been an incredibly spiritual person, but this totally blew open my lens for life and really kickstarted me into quite an intense spiritual awakening. I had been through them before, but now waking up to spiritual gifts and what do boundaries mean and what does presence mean and all the questions that you have early on. Am I an empath? What does that look like? And it really triggered these challenges, I suppose, this invitation to look at life from a new perspective, that it is possible to move things and I can release things that are painful to me and I can use them for my own benefit. So what I'm doing now with people is something very similar, where I go into a session and I'm essentially activating by reflecting back to them exactly what they're doing, what their experience has been, and teaching them to reframe and move into a new sense of embodiment with their life and really empower them in the direction that they've always felt like they wanted to go.
Oh my God, it's so cool. And also, which is crazy, when I was reading your application on our podcast, was before I started my business, I also worked in a mental health facility. And a lot of people were in halfway houses. And I left that and I started business coaching, but it wasn't a full circle moment until later on in my business. And I too went through similar situations, abusive relationship, and that also kickstarted this other thing, right? So it's really cool how those similarities happen. And I've seen this a lot online. It's so many spiritual entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, literally are light workers, even they don't even know it. They have no idea. And I'm like, that carved your path for here. So I think that's really cool. So tell me more. Okay, so you went through the miscarriage. A woman put her hands on you, which is also called Reiki, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what they refer to it as. She did energy healing. It changed your life. What made you say, okay, now I want to go do this for other people?
It was really it wasn't so much that I was ready to go do it for other people. It was more that I had always been doing it, and now I had access to the tools that I needed to
Yeah.
put a framework around it.
Oh,
And like,
cool.
yeah, so I've always been incredibly spiritual. When I was involved in substance abuse treatment and things like that, I would host workshops, and so I was this teacher. So I was kind of already in that space,
Yeah.
but it gave me the language and the tools that I needed to really discuss what I had been already internally experiencing. So it was kind of an awakening. It was more of a remembering, which is how I talk about it with my clients. So everything along my path has just it's been like a veil has been lifted, and there's this sense of clarity, like, oh, like this is who I am. This is what I'm intended to do. And by the way, I've already been doing it the whole time. And
Yeah.
now I understand it finally.
That's so cool. Do you think that every single person here is born with spiritual gifts and all they have to do is open themselves up to it?
Absolutely. And that's really the path to healing, is this process of, a lot of times in this community, we call it remembering, or that's why it's called reawakening. It's really this concept that everything, pain, suffering, addiction, while we're discussing that,
Mhm.
is all these wounds and fear are really kind of blocking us off from
Mhm.
our understanding our innate spiritual gifts. So when it comes to spiritual gift development, healing, it's really about releasing everything that's standing in the way of us being in our true nature. So it's never something that we're developing. It's always a process of uncovering.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. And I think that this parallels really, really well with business and owning a business. And the reason being is because almost everyone here in this space has a personal brand, right? Like it's your personal story and journey, and that's what connects with other people. And then you sell your things based on that and your experience. But so many business owners like immediately jump out of the gate of like, okay, what are we doing? Like, what is everyone doing? What's the thing? How do I become successful? It's like, how do you just be better at being you? How do you connect more with being you? And everyone's path to that is different. But the second you are willing to connect with you on a deeper level and like uncover this version of you, that's when success really happens. So I have so many questions for you because I am just like a spiritual nerd and I want to learn all the things. So, one of my first questions to you is, because I've always wanted to do a Reiki session, but I'm always nervous, is I heard this woman talk about she got one done. She felt really dizzy and like kind of sick. She went home, laid down, woke up from a nap. She could see dead people. She could fully talk to dead people, super psychic. And she went back to the Reiki master and was like, fix this now. Like, what happened? He was like, I have no idea. I've never heard of that happening before. Is this a thing? And how common is it?
It is way more common than you'd think. The level that you experience awakening around energy healing depends on how open you are to receiving it. Energy will always go where it's intended to go in a Reiki energy session. The energy is very intelligent in that way. And just like I mentioned previously, it's really about removing. So when you're going into this energy healing session, you're having blocks removed, even negative or stagnant energy removed. All of a sudden, you're in this awakening process. All of a sudden, you have access to these spiritual gifts. And that can look like talking to dead people. It can also look like having your confidence back, or noticing that you're able to get pregnant is a big one that I see a lot for people. So it's really kind of, you're just discovering what's already in there. And the thing with spiritual awakening, it's kind of like getting a new pair of glasses where you can see everything so clearly, except the only catch is you can't take them off. Like there's
Yeah.
no going back.
Back. Yeah.
I personally tried, and was very unsuccessful and went through a lot of pain, which only informed my spiritual awakening even more.
Same.
But everybody has a variety of experiences. It's not something I can see and remember why it was scary in the beginning, but it doesn't have to be this really woo-woo, um, crazy experience. It can be gentle. It can be meeting yourself where you're at and creating space for what's going on with you. And that's one of the things that I work with people a lot if we're going to talk about brand identity. am
Yeah.
I worthy of discovering what that is? What are the blocks in me that aren't allowing me to see that or make me feel afraid when it comes to meeting myself?
Oh, absolutely. I remember specifically, I went through one of my first spiritual awakenings and I was just like, I'm so sick of being so self aware. Like, it's almost like hurting me because I think that everything is a problem and now everything needs a solution. And I'm like, I'm also OCD, so then I'm like zoning in on all these like areas and I'm like trying to fix it all and fix it all. And I went to therapy for years. My
Mhm,
therapist was like, "You're way too self-aware for therapy. Like you don't need this." And I was like,
mhm.
"That's really interesting." And that kind of like kicks started this whole thing. But I agree with you. There's so many people that think spirituality or Reiki or energy work, it's like so woo. There's not a line between like the two, right? And spirituality is just like coming back to yourself, like coming back to the center of the essence of you. And like you said, it's like the perfect gateway to building the most epic like it factor in your brand. Like you are it.
Absolutely. I have had several businesses. I've made a lot of attempts, made a lot of mistakes, failed a lot, a lot.
Same.
And but this go around, I attribute my success to doing this as an experiment. To
Yeah.
only, and I don't know what you offer in your coaching, so I don't want to go against any of what you
Oh
shared.
no.
Personal experience is only doing things when it feels in alignment, only
Yeah.
doing things when it feels right to me, only doing things that reflect what feels good to me in the moment. And it has been an introspective journey and it's triggered so much growth. And it's really through allowing myself to go through that experience of self discovery that I attribute all of the success that I've had on TikTok and within my personal business.
Oh, for sure. That was me this whole year was like, why am I doing all the things I hate doing? Like every day I'm unhappy. Every day I'm miserable. I'm like, I built a business to be happy, to be free. I didn't build a business to work a job. And now I'm doing all these things because I think I should. And so this whole year has been like tearing it down and rebuilding. And like I'm only doing things that I'm obsessed with, that I love and that light me up. And everything else has just gotta go. And it's been life changing so far. Okay, one of my big questions for you, can you read anybody's energy without their permission? Like right now, you could just read my energy immediately. Does it, like, how does it work?
So it depends on who you talk to. Some people will say that you don't have access to reading other people's energy without their explicit consent. Personally, my experience is that I can tap into anybody's energy at any time.
Yeah.
And but my personal boundaries is that I wouldn't without their express consent. It feels important for a lot of reasons, but really just honoring people's privacy is a big part of
Yeah.
that. So personally, I wouldn't.
Yeah. And the reason I ask that is because one of my biggest things is that I can read people's energy, but I don't tell people that because for me it's overwhelming and I'm still learning. So because I can read people's energy and I'm very sensitive to it, it overwhelms me and overstimulates me. And I'm just learning how to create that boundary of like protecting my own energy while also, you know what I'm saying? I'm just now learning it. But the reason I ask is like, you go in public. Like for me, I go in public, I'm drained all the time because I can just pick up on energy. And then I'm like, I just want to go home. It's like, how do you balance being able to read into your own energy and also opening the door? Because sometimes that opens the door to like reading other people's. Because for me, it was like a self journey. And now I'm like, oh my God, now I can read other people's energy. And I don't want to do that necessarily.
So I love this conversation. This is one of the things that I talk about all the time because I'm so passionate about it. And it's because people who are awakening to spirituality are also usually coming from some form of significant to minor trauma. That's what triggers us into what's going on in the world. Who am I? This doesn't fit. I feel weird. And it shocks us into our awakening. What can happen, especially for women, is those of us that have adapted to trauma through hypervigilance. That's when, say dad's an alcoholic, we need to be constantly vigilant about what kind of mood he's in, how he's showing up a traumatic, toxic relationship, with a narcissistic partner, same thing. We're always observing. It's kind of acts on the nature of women anyway. And it's not exclusive to women, but it is particularly common. And then we kind of awaken to this empathic perspective of that, and those lines become very blurry. So when there's that sense of overwhelm, or we're experiencing somebody else's vibration to the point where it's detrimental to us, then it becomes paramount to invite those personal boundaries, kind of like I just talked about, that I wouldn't ever tap into somebody's energy without their consent. That being said, some people project their energy and you can't miss it. Like, it's
Yeah.
just there. And so inviting some personal protective practices uh, is helpful, but I would challenge my clients, the people that are listening, to really ask the question, like, is this a trauma response or is this true intuition?
Oh, I love that. That's really good. Okay, so then my follow-up question to that too is like when you say you read people's energy, because I think maybe it's different. Like maybe there's different perspectives. I don't know. I'm still new. Is like, can you read someone's like actual creator field?
What do you mean?
So I know someone in the industry and she can read your creative field. So like she can see this is the way that I visualize it when she talks about it. It's like everyone projects their own energy field, and based on what you project is what you'll like catch in your net essentially. So whatever you're giving the universe, whatever you believe in, it's also attracting certain things back to you, people, places, things, behaviors, patterns. So she can read that field and then she can help you like redirect your field on what it is you will attract. So for instance, one of the big ones is like literally in your business, attracting clients, like attracting certain clients based on your own energetic field. She even talks about like anxiety or disease or like OCD, and that you're attracting that into your creator field and it can be removed. I'm still like trying to understand it all. But when people say like energy in general, like it's such a broad term. So I'm just curious, like,
Yes.
if you're knowing what I'm
So,
asking.
yes, I understand what you're asking. I've never heard that term before, so that's why I was a little bit confused, but I'm gonna definitely look into that. I would call that um, law of attraction for
Yeah,
those of us in business. That's a big part of it. We get out, Um, and so I would say, yes, I would personally call that your vibration. The way that I talk about it is that vibration exists on a scale, and wherever you are on that scale, you're a match to everything else that's going on in there.
I love
The
that.
additional portion to that is you can also only see at that vibration as well. So if there's a problem, the clarity you're looking for exists on another vibration. So everything that we're doing really operates on what you're experiencing on a vibrational level. Fear and shame being at the bottom, love, joy, and expansion being at the top. We're usually somewhere in the middle. So, yes, I can absolutely read that for what's going on for people. Certain practitioners, we all kind of have different gifts in the way that we read in our personal protection, or excuse me, personal perception. That is one that I do read. My primary function is actually looking at people's physical bodies, looking into their chakra systems, what's going on, blocking them physically, and working with that at a somatic, at a physical level, rather than like going into therapy and talking about it and getting into the story of the trauma. I don't even do that anymore. I deal with what's going on in your physical body, how can we release that, and then in turn, their vibration is raising, what they're attracting is raising, what they're seeing is totally shifting.
That's so cool. I love it. I love it for so many reasons, but I've been very open here that I've been in therapy since I was a child for many traumas, and it just nothing changed. It's just the same old story over and over again, which is what brought me here, right? To like this place spiritually. So I guess the next question I have for you, and I think the listeners will want to know too, is like, what do I do? I've been through trauma. A lot of my listeners have in some way, shape, or form. Big trauma, little trauma, doesn't matter. It's all trauma. They're also business owners. They also want to like pull out their confidence and their it factor. Like they want to be able to show up in this way, but fear keeps them small, right? And it's like, okay, so now what do we do to raise this energy, this vibration to, for so many people, they're like, quantum leap. How can I quantum leap? How can I be a completely different person? And a lot of people that have coached have associated with like, once I get clients, once I get money, I will become this person, which we all know isn't true. You're going to become her first. You have to be an energetic match for that amount of money, clients, etc. So what would you tell them is like, what is step one to raising your vibration, your energy, to cracking open this door?
Permission. First of all, let yourself be exactly where you are. Something that we talked about a little bit early on, you were talking about this high level of introspection where we can consistently look for things that are wrong, that in itself can be detrimental, because then we're always sending this message to ourselves that we're not quite healed. The bar is always just out of reach. Once I get 4 clients or once I charge X amount of money, it tends to manifest in that direction. When it comes to the vibrational scale that I mentioned before, it doesn't matter so much where you are as the direction that you're moving in. So first of all, allowing yourself to be there. It makes sense that you're there. You've been through so many things. We are all naturally going to end up where we're intended to be. That being said, once we allow ourselves to be there, moving into the sensation of presence, looking for things that feel good to you out of all the options in front of you, brushing my teeth, taking a shower. And I'm not saying release all your obligations, go to work, do what you need to do,
Yeah.
but pick the thing that feels best to you and continue to do that. And that alone is going to trigger a whole, that's going to trigger a lot of stuff. All the reasons that you're not choosing things that feel good to you, all the reasons that you're sacrificing and like hustling instead of allowing yourself this moment of pleasure. And then once we're moving in that direction, appreciation for everything that's coming in, looking for things to be grateful for, literally do that for 3 days. I promise, I know that's a hefty thing to say.
Yeah.
Permission, presence, and appreciation. Do it for 3 days, and you will have an entire new perspective on life.
I'm obsessed. I wish somebody would have told me 8 years ago when I started that you don't have to work really hard, hustle your life away, be miserable. It doesn't have to be complicated, and you don't have to do things you don't want to do. Like, none of us got into business to just do what other people told us to do, and we always go back to it almost every time. But having this permission in the very beginning of like, the world is your oyster. You get to do whatever the hell you want to do. Like, let it be fun. Allow it to like just be like creative and enjoyable, right? Like, we're not here for misery. And when you do that, it's a full circle moment in your business, your finances, like things change and they change quickly. So I would love for you to tell everyone who's listening, how can they stop holding themselves back or playing small when it comes to showing up in the world online, right? Because we know that in order to build a personal brand and make money, you have to show up. Then there's fear of showing up. And it's just like this cycle that people just stay in. How do they break from that cycle?
The answer to that is, for me personally, it came from experiencing a lot of pain and feeling, and I wish I had a better answer, but really getting to that point where I am so uncomfortable, I have to change something, and then just taking the action and showing up. And really, for me, it was about not doing it perfectly.
Yeah.
Doing something that felt, I do energy healing on TikTok primarily because I could do it in my sleep. And then I started to add things, but consistently showing up, even just in a small way, every single day, things start to build. And that's, and like I said before, like that's going to trigger stuff.
Yeah.
And holding space for that when it comes up. Fears are trying to communicate something to you. Anxiety, people may come for me for this. Anxiety is not a disorder or something to be shunned away. It is your body trying to communicate something to you. Fears are trying to keep you safe. I would move into something called reparenting. This is something that I offer in my trauma integration course. When there's fears coming up, there's a part of you that isn't feeling safe. Same thing with the ego. When people talk about ego death, I'm not a personal fan of that because it's just a function within our bodies to try to keep us safe. Stepping into something that's unfamiliar is scary, and parts of you are going to rage against that, and that's okay. We
Yeah.
can feel that and still take the action anyway. We can feel that fear and still get out on stage, still raise your prices to the point that feels within integrity but uncomfortable. Like, you
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. And I think another thing too, which I hear quite a bit when I'm talking to my women about like pulling out this energy, they're like, yeah, but I'm not like you. Like, I'm not loud and fiery and in your face and like over the top. And I'm like, that's the thing. That's my energy. Like, that's who I am. Like, that's my power. But the big question that they have is, how do I show up with my energy when it's not like that, like it's different. It's more quiet. It's more small. That's the words they use. 'Cause to me, it's like, that's not a thing. Like small energy is not a thing. Unless you're like literally holding yourself back. So my question to you is, for someone who's listening, who's not loud and outgoing and feeling super confident, how do they show up with their energy and still make impact?
Practice doing it. It's kind of like developing spiritual gifts. It takes that action. For me, when I showed up, you can actually go scroll back through all my TikTok videos and you can see a version of me that is extremely uncomfortable being on camera, making these videos. And I had all of those questions when I'm going into the TikTok space that is incredibly saturated with readers and energy healers. And putting myself out there, letting and allowing myself really to have the experience. Because a lot of times for me personally, I'm holding myself back from letting myself experience it. I feel like I need to go in, I need to mask, I need to present in a certain way, but that's genuinely not what's in resonance anymore. And if it makes you feel any better, like people are genuinely looking for authenticity, they're looking for real. So you going up and being uncomfortable on camera, uncomfortable on stage, like that is all allowed. Give yourself, going back to that permission, like give yourself permission to be uncomfortable, to not know what that energy is, because it's always going to be that way. Like to
Yep.
let you in on a little secret, like I feel the most like myself like I ever have in my entire life. But talk to me 2 weeks ago or 2 weeks from now. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this new identity is. And I hope and I genuinely look forward to those transformation processes, because if I knew exactly what I wanted to project all the time, I'd be missing out on so much of my experience. Like that that beginning part, like that's some of the best stuff. And I know it's challenging in the beginning, but that's where the real growth happens. And can you allow yourself, dare I say, to be brave enough to show up imperfectly?
Yep.
And PS, you're going to offer the most service to people a lot of times in that space, especially people who are looking to do the same thing as you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I gained, I would say, almost all of my clients through imperfection. A girl just
Oh,
signed up for my $10,000 mastermind, and she was like, I like you because your emails, you always have something spelled wrong. Yeah, that tracks. That adds up. Because yeah, I don't do like the perfection, right? It's just like, this is who I am, but it takes time to unmask. And in order to do it, you do have to start. Like you do have to put yourself out there. It's not like you're gonna be this person and then go out in the world and like be polished. It just doesn't work. And people are sick of it. People are over the perfection.
and it depends on what the wound is too. Like if it's fear around being seen, like putting yourself out there, allowing yourself to be seen, feeling what that feels like, fear of other people's judgment or what so and so is going to say, or, I don't have a million followers on YouTube already, so like I shouldn't even start. It's like you got to be willing to go along the journey, because that's so cliche. Oh my God. But that's where your life is happening. That's where that's the excitement and the nuanced fears and the transformation. Like that's where it all really is.
Yeah, and I just talked about this yesterday with my students, was fear of success, because
Mm.
I have a lot of women who do come from trauma, or they grew up in trauma, and so with business, they get to a successful point and they self-sabotage and they burn it down and they're like, I want to quit, I don't want to do this, and like you worked so hard to get to this space, and you haven't regulated yourself to live and receive. So the second that it's good, you want to stop it.
Yeah, well, that happens when we make from my perspective, that happens when we make energetic jumps that are too big. It's like we don't have, going back to the vibrational scale, we don't have the vibration to back that up, which is why the journey is so important, which is why these challenges are so important. So you can go incrementally along this pathway so you can physically hold everything that you're trying to create. Because if it showed up tomorrow, could you let yourself have it?
Exactly. I just thought about this recently, which was because a lot of people know my story is I grew up in poverty. I lived in a trailer. We were poor my whole life. And then in college, I wrecked my credit. I started my business with $100 and wrecked credit. if I would have been a multi-six-figure business owner out of the gate, out of the first few years, I would have blown it all. I wouldn't have known how to do anything with it. I would have ruined it. And it took me that experience of going through things and navigating like how to hold and charge large amounts of money to be here. But I wasn't ready a long time ago when I was like, I want it so badly, but that's why. Like I wasn't an energetic match for it.
Do you get excited? Do you get excited? I find this about myself. Do you get excited when you get new challenges or like new wounds or shadows are coming up for you?
Yeah, I do. This just happened. Like it's like this year. I don't know what's happening this year, but it's like a rapid unfolding of things. I'm like, oh, whoa, I didn't realize like that was connected. And one of the big ones for me has been ego around money and how I spend my money and how I save my money and like the car that I drive and having a brand new home where now I'm like, none of that really mattered. And now I made it matter for so,
And what does that mean now? Who am I
right?
now? The
Right?
identity shift now. But that's it. Like that's the good stuff. Like once you get in a pattern of like learning how to navigate challenges, really through self-compassion is like you want to unlock all your stuff, you want to know what your blocks are, try some self-compassion and you'll find out.
Right.
I look forward to those. Actually, leading up to this podcast, I had a bunch of stuff just like totally break down like all of these internal questions. What does this mean? How do I want to show up? What's my identity? Just totally unrelated, but it made me so excited for this podcast. I was just laughing about my friend before we came on here that like that's a really good sign. Like when stuff is breaking down or you're getting triggered or there's stuff coming up or so and so's like up like bothering you, like, ugh,
You're right there. Yep.
that's the stuff. Oh my gosh, I raised my price. I doubled my prices recently,
Yep.
and it was so exciting. And I had this like burst of new clients. I opened up my courses, and all of a sudden, I'm in a totally new bracket and was instantly confronted with all of the reasons why I was afraid to do it in the past. And
Yep.
there's nothing that you can do really than other than allow it to come up and offer all of that stuff compassion and decide that I don't have to live like that anymore. Like that doesn't have to be my identity anymore. I can choose something else.
Yeah. When I went through my rebrand earlier this year, this all happened, which was the moment you decide to up level your brand, your vision, your prices, your offers, it all comes full circle. Like, oh, you want this? Let me give you all the things you have to work on to have it. And that's how you know it's working. And so I would have like panicked in the past and I completely shut the doors on everything. I had made over 117 grand in quarter one, shut it all down. And I was like, shut off sales, was pivoting through it all. And old me would have just spiraled. The new me was like, oh my God, like I'm getting all the reasons why this is working and what I need to do to make it work. And it was just like incredible. But yeah, I did. I was like, I know it's working. This is how I know it's working. But you do have to like find those things, like find those patterns, because for so many of you, it's like, oh, this is proof that it isn't working. For us, it's like, oh, this is proof that it is, right? Because you're being challenged. But I love how he's like, what does this mean? This is, I'm in a mastermind, this is what we talk about all the time. Like, why are we always making it mean something? It's not that big of a deal. Like most of the time, what if it doesn't mean anything?
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing with limiting beliefs and like core traumas. It's like, how can I release these lenses that I've been carrying around for so long that just don't fit? And it's
Yeah,
all uncomfortable because it doesn't fit, because that's not who you are. You're so
exactly.
much more than that. You're so much bigger. You have so much more to offer than what you've been told or programmed to believe to be true about yourself.
Yeah. Can you tell everybody where can they find you and how can they work with you?
Absolutely. So you can find me primarily on TikTok at meg.kit, Kit. Please be mindful of scammers. There's so many copycat accounts. I have about 70,000 followers, so make sure that you're choosing the right one. You can also find me on Instagram at megkit with 2 T's. And all of that information, but all my website, all that stuff is both on TikTok and Instagram. My website is megankittredge.com. You can work with me one-on-one for one-off sessions, primarily right now if you want to get the most value for your time and the commitment that you're putting into yourself. You can book one of my psychic mastery or trauma integration courses, both trauma informed, both designed to meet you where you are and use your own skills and your own tools to reawaken you to go in the direction that you really are destined to go.
I love it. Everything will be linked below in the show notes. Go follow her. Go check her out. She's incredible. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a gift to meet with you.
Of course. And we will chat with you guys on the next episode.